If you're enjoying the Heath Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This episode is sponsored by Well Balanced Nutrition and 360 Health.
Welcome to the Heath Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Hello, everybody. This is Eleanor Russell, a health geek, sitting around the table with Tim, our producer, and Kristen Norton.
Hey, hey.
And down in Alabama, we've got Cliff Arsenault, PAC, and business owner and
author.
And his book is Keeping Your Marbles, a field guide for preventing and treating cognitive decline. And this is our second episode with Cliff. Thank you, Cliff, for taking time today.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
Good. Well, we were talking about your memory protocol and your work with geriatric patients, but you also said you had practiced in family practice as well as cardiology. And I am really interested in prevention. I don't have dementia yet. Hope I can avoid it. So some of our conversation with Cliff is about before you're diagnosed and then after you may have a diagnosis or someone you love has one. And I will say he made reference in the last episode to cold old women. And I'm not going to forget that, Cliff. So the idea is that in my peer group, I am hearing reports of people I know very well saying, I can't take care of my husband anymore. And I have a husband who said, my wife knocked my front teeth out the other day. I can't do this anymore. You know, the agitation that comes with some of the decline of Alzheimer's is very devastating to partners in particular and caregiving. So, this is a real topic for me. And we just finished doing an episode on how to break up with your phone. We've done a book on brainwashing. We know that brain health is really being challenged these days, and if we don't do some of these practices, incorporate them and promote them, we're headed as a society into some chaos because medical services are not going to be able to take care of this baby boomer slug that's up in these older ages now if we don't take care of our brains. So that's my little soapbox there.
So in the memory protocol, we talked about diet on the last episode and a little bit about exercise. But the other parts of that protocol are sleep and deal with your stress. So hopefully we can talk about that in this episode.
Yeah, but we didn't really get to the exercise thing. One of the things I was going to say about Cliff's ideas, which I really went, this is neat. He recommends the 30 minutes of getting a little sweaty every day, which I think we've heard from other authorities. But he kind of promotes the isometric program.
Oh, yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And went back to Charles Atlas, which, way back, we were hearing about at the turn of the century, and in the 50s, there were some practices that people were promoting, and then we forgot about them. Mm-hmm. So how did you find Charles Atlas and isometrics?
I found Charles Atlas after I hurt my back. Actually, I herniated 2 discs in my back.
Oh, geez.
Right before, at the beginning of 2004. So,
yeah, I kind of remember some pain with that.
Yeah. And so me being busy at Wake Forest, and then so I stumbled upon a book that was promoting different isometric exercises and got into Charles Atlas and found it was a really good way to kind of rebuild my back and get my strength up without hurting myself any further. Because you could have done the gym, the gym bro guy, and who just goes and just keeps doing it and
CrossFit.
It's worse. Yes. Because that's part of the culture. I mean, anyways, that's a whole nother fun thing to talk about.
Yeah, another episode.
Another episode, yes. So that's what led me to the isometrics, which made me think about when I was trying to think of something really safe that just about anybody could do, because part of the point I wanted to do with the book was have you could start the book today, right? You could do everything and that you didn't have to send away for the $300 piece of exercise equipment, which I think is one of the reasons that the Atlas protocols and the just isometrics fall by the wayside, because once you know them, you know them and there's nothing else to buy, right? You can sell it. You can get some webbing or rope or something, your special isometric rope. Maybe we should do that. Be keeping your marble and rope, right, for your isometric exercise. Coming soon for $19.99.
Yeah.
I'll just buy a bunch of rope and sell it online and make some money. But
Health Geeks Book Club
that's all you need.
podcast.
Right? That's right.
But what is isometrics?
So isometrics are going to be movement, pitting your muscle strength against something that does not move, right? So the idea is you could do it pushing against the wall, pushing against a tree, pulling against a rope, pulling against yourself, trying to lift your car bumper. Those are all going to be, depending on who you are, most people aren't going to be able to lift the car, which is really what I have in the book, the idea of just self-resistance exercises, which is really a lot of what the Charles Atlas dynamic tension system was all about. You can also sit there and pretend you're lifting something heavy, but that requires a certain amount of mental fortitude or concentration, which is difficult to figure out right out of the box, right? So, but anybody can sit there, and what I usually use to teach people is you grab so put your hands together right in front of your chest, not like you're going to pray, but like you're going to arm wrestle yourself, and then you just push your hands together as hard as you can until your arms start to shake, and ta-da, that is a isometric exercise for your chest. And then if you want to double that, you can switch your grip and then try to pull your hands apart from the other one, right? Pull your right hand against your left hand as hard as you can until they start to shake. And all of a sudden you're starting to work your back muscles. And so these are different things. You need to control your breath because you don't want to pop a vein or anything while you're doing this. There you go. That's what you do while you're doing it. That's it. So when I was trying to think of something that anybody could just start doing in order to increase your strength, because there are the exercise, the volume of evidence that shows that regular exercise that does not have to be CrossFit, right? You don't have to do P90X, even though I've done that a few times and enjoy it. But you don't have to do that high level of, oh my gosh, I'm about to hurt myself type of exercise. In fact, that's not what you want to do. This is something we've done on a regular basis for the next 20, 30 years, right? You want to do something that's good and safe and effective. And the more muscle you build, the happier your brain tends to be.
Wonderful.
There's lots of science.
Yeah.
So that's why I threw that in the book.
Yeah. And then the sleep and the de-stressing, which involves the exercise and socialization and meditation practices, are good. I kind of want to go into the genetics and drug thing, even though they're big words. It seems like I remember the ApoE4 gene discussion and how it's involved in cholesterol transport and increased inflammation and oxidative stress. And you have nice ways of saying things like rust and clogged, plumbing. Your language is just delightful in this book, and it makes it humorous, and it is hopeful because you have that humor edge to your comments, but they're so well grounded in science, as you said. And I don't think I was aware of the Nigerian paradox in that ApoE4.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the ApoE4 is the Alzheimer's gene, or that's what it gets pegged as. And you try to figure out why we would have such a time bomb sitting in our genetic toolbox. But the idea is it helps with your inflammation and everything. So that if you do, like I say, if you step on a stick in the Serengeti, if you're wrestling the saber-toothed tiger, you want to be able to heal faster. And so you need good access to good inflammation and cell repair. And animal cells are made out of cholesterol. So you need to be able to move stuff around and heal. Yeah. So it can be a very good thing. Now, it can also turn against us, like so many things here in the Western diet, Western ways. But so with the ApoE4, you have a higher rate of getting dementia than the average. And if you get one allele, you get a 70-80% chance. If you get both of them, it's nigh unto certain. In the West, in America, in North Carolina, your chances of that being high, or in Oregon or wherever you want to put
right.
Your chances are really, really, really high.
Yeah.
But in Nigeria and in the places where they do not eat the Western diet, when they're not eating the standard American diet, it's not as big a deal. The chances are no greater than anybody else. It's all about the epigenetics, right? It's all about how you turn that gene on and when you turn that
right.
as to how it's going to be expressed.
Yeah, so even though these Nigerians have the highest ApoE4 number, I mean, in their population, right, they've got the lowest rate of Alzheimer's, and that's the paradox. So you say, you can out-eat your genetics, and I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the eating does show up number one on your protocol list on making those choices about diet.
Right.
But now let's say you're aging, and in the American medical system, you go in and get checked. You get options of drugs and pharmaceuticals quite often, and people start them with just trust that this is a good idea. And in the earlier episode, you said something about we could do all these high-tech things that, are really expensive and they hurt and they're going to make you feel bad, or we could do a lifestyle change. You introduced me to the beers list, which I think everybody needs to know about. If you go into your medical conventional system, and they're asking you to take drugs for overactive bladder or Parkinson's or antidepressants or antihistamines, like Benadryl over the counter, and you're in over 50 age group. What is this beers list?
It's a list started by Dr. Beers, which I had to look up because I was trying to figure out what Beers would stand for, like, better endocrine engineering.
You're too clever.
Someday better than others. So Dr. Beers started this list many moons ago, and it is basically drugs that have the potential, not 100%, but a higher potential to hurt you as you get older. So, do we still use some of the? Do I still use some of the beer stuff on the beers list for my patients? Yes. I can't sit there and go, we never do. But you need to have the conversation with the family or with the patient and say, hey, this has the potential to make you sleepy, make you confused. And if you're already got some head full of bad wiring, you might not want to take this because it could make it so much worse. Or if you're on that Humpty Dumpty, kind of teeter-totter moment, and then you take one of these drugs and it kind of tips you over into the Badlands, then that's not a great choice. So I do think everybody needs to at least be aware of what they're taking, which is why the beers list itself is really quite extensive. And I tried to put the whole thing in the book, and it was really long. And as my wife likes to tease, I did the Cliff's Notes version, which I've heard that joke my whole life.
Cliff.
So we did.
You could have called the book Cliff Notes.
Well, if I didn't think I'd get sued, I would probably do that. From the Cliff Notes people, but I haven't heard from them in a while, so I think we're okay now. Okay. But the idea is that we at least toned it down and tried to make it specifically for the brain stuff, instead of just your bladder and everything. But it is true. Most of your overactive bladder medications, a lot of the older ones do have the potential to increase your odds of getting dementia or making the dementia that you have potentially worse. And you need to know that. The things like Benadryl pops in and out, or I should probably say diphenhydramine. Diphenhydramine, which is the generic form of Benadryl. It does pop in and off of the dementia list because at times they've thought that it contributed to dementia. Then they're like, no, it's not. Well, maybe it is. No, it's not. So you at least need to know that has the potential to make things worse. Does that mean you may still need it? Because, if you get into the poison ivy, you might need it. But should you be taking it every single night to fall asleep? No, you should not, because it will probably end up hurting you more than it would help you. And so it's just good to know. Well, good to at least know what you're taking.
Yeah, and when we did the Food Fix book, Mark Hyman talked about regulations and food things, but you mentioned the FDA with a very troubling report on, and I'm not really good at pharmaceutical terms, but the aducanumab. however you say
Yeah.
that drug, and the awful side effects, and then the FDA went against its own panel and approved the drug anyway, and it's not any more effective than these other things maybe. What do you, how do you, I'm glad you're following these things and you can tell your patients about it, but how many are? Because, we trust FDA, generally.
Generally, we assume that the FDA is supposed to be taking care of us. And so that's actually that section of the book. When I originally wrote it, going back and rereading it, I sounded much more like an Old Testament prophet who was just railing against the system. And the lady, Rachel, my editor, was like, you can't, you're going to get sued. So I turned it down a lot, but I really got mad at the situation. So what they did, the idea is you have this drug that was going to be put on the shelf because 2 out of the 3 drug trials, it failed. And then for whatever reason, the manufacturer took another look at it, basically. And I understand they spent millions of dollars trying to bring this drug to market, not out of any nefarious purpose. I mean, they're trying to help, but of course they also they want to make money. We all need to put food on the table. I understand that. So they took another look at it, massaged the numbers a little bit, and decided, well, maybe it wouldn't be that bad. So they re-released it. It works by trying to remove the amyloid plaques in the brain. So that's one of the signature hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. Is always these messy, gooey things that gum up the works inside of your brain when you get specific forms of dementia. And so this drug helps to remove those plaques out of your brain. So the idea is basically you get in there with a putty knife and you scrape all this gunk out and hope the brain works better. Okay, all right, that sounds reasonable. But unfortunately, when you get in there with a putty knife and you start scraping stuff off, it bleeds, right? And so you get a fair amount of brain bleed from taking the drug. And so you just have to decide how much, and it's not a potential side effect. It's going to happen. What you hope is that it's not too bad. You hope you don't develop a clinically one that affects you bad enough. That you don't develop like the subdural hematoma or just a straight out cerebral vascular accident. You get a stroke from it. You hope it doesn't get that bad, but it's probably going to can cause some headaches because, hey, you went in with a putty knife on your brain. And how it helps is it slows down the rate of decline, right? So it's a 22% decrease in the amount that you decline on the drug. And by the way, it costs as much as a new BMW every single year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right? So, and this was why I got really irate, and I still will get fired up about it, because this was going to be what they released. And it got denied. The European FDA, I forget what the name of that is, took a look at it and said, nope. And several other countries took a look and go, nope, not worth it. And then Medicare decided they're not going to pay for it, except for if they wanted some more clinical trials put on just to try and see. And unfortunately, this particular class of medication has already been tried, and it's not as anywhere near. It's just as slightly effective as the current medications we already have, right? Which all they do is slow down the rate of decline. That is the best the pharmaceuticals can do. You take somebody who's on a steep slide and you try to slow the slide down, maybe make a plateau for 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. It hasn't really been studied past 2 years, because when you study past 2 years, you get diminishing returns, which is, you don't really want to publish that.
Well, so
you want the most recent.
Yeah.
That's probably the best ones if you
right, and we don't want to lend. We don't want to end on a hopeless note, which this sounds hopeless, the pharmaceutical choices. What you're offering is an alternative with your memory protocol that is really hopeful and it's engaging. And Cliff, we are just so excited that you've written this book. We hope that more and more people will find it, read it, embrace it. And we appreciate you taking time. There's so much more we could talk about here, but unfortunately our time is running out for today.
The meditation part is exciting too. That part blew my mind when I studied that. So everyone should read that section too.
Okay, and we will get back to you another time, because I think you have more to share with us, and we'll find a book to have you talk to about us.
So is keepingyourmarbles.info, right, is the website?
Right. Keepingyourmarbles.info is the website. Yeah. And then my other website is residentialmedicine.com. Yeah.
And wishing you a lot of luck on that venture, and hope it grabs hold and people embrace that new model.
Yes. Thank you so much, Cliff, for your time and writing this book. I really enjoyed reading it. And I am Kristen Norton, one of the 3 registered dietitians at Well Balanced Nutrition, where we offer nutrition and wellness coaching. So if you want to take on some of the lifestyle changes in Cliff's book and you want somebody to hold your hand, give us a visit at wellbalancednutrition.com to see if we can be of help.
And I'm Eleanor Russell at 360health4u.com. We didn't get to talk about his ideas on supplementation, so we may have to do that one day. And I like helping people make choices and designing a healthy lifestyle. Contact me at my website, 360health4u.com.
healthgeekspodcast.com. Go to the Keeping Your Marbles posts, and you can order your book through that website.
Happy reading, everybody, and stay healthy.
Bye, y'all.
Views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.